All right, you guys ready? All right, so we're building this a little bit. I had this on the agenda last week to talk about that came really, I had last week's agenda because I could feel it, and then Ryan gave me the sales report on Saturday, and it's a major problem. So I want to talk about it. I talked about it last year. I looked last time, it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago we talked about it. But what do you think the number one Achilles heel is right now in real estate for everybody's business? Interest rates, what else? What's bigger than that?
Appointments being booked.
Bigger than that. Because deals falling through. I can track appointments coming in and out easily, right? You know if you have appointments or not. You know if you're making the dials or not. But what happens, what I've noticed is what's happening more than ever, and it's not just here, it's across the industry. I was talking with Ashley at Elite, and they said 20-30% of deals right now are falling through. Across the board, right? It's happening in other areas. Why do you think that is? Buyer uncertainty. Right? A lot of chaos going on in the marketplace, right? Interest rates are higher, things are more expensive, and there's a lot more to choose from. Before, there's a frenzy, and there's 400 houses to pick from. They're going to stick with what they got because they have fear of loss, right? Now there's 1,911 as of yesterday, active single families, and they got so much to choose from. What tends to happen? Yeah, they look online, see a different one. Oh, there's so many different to choose from. I'm not really sure what I want. This is not the perfect one. And so now everything, little thing happens, they're looking as a sign for them not to do it. Same thing on the seller side. If I got a listing, they're buying something else, right? They're in hesitation because they're not sure if they're number one getting the most for their house, because guess what all sellers think right now? They think their house is worth way more than it is. They're still stuck in 2021, right? And so they have a lot of resistance. The buyers have a lot of resistance, which is creating a lot of deals to fall through. It's a silent killer. Some of you all in here have more deals fall through this year than you have close. It's a major problem, right? I was going through my last video. It was like halfway through the year when I taught it last time, and one of the people in there had lost $165,000 in commission to them and deals falling through just that half of the year, right? That's just net commission to them, okay? And so the major problem here, is it the market necessarily? Is it the leads are crazy? Or what's the real problem? 100% you, right? But here's what's happened. That's the reason I'm teaching today. Most agents, what do they tend to do? Blame everybody else. It's the buyer's fault. It's the seller's fault. Now, are there some instances where you're on the listing side and you can't control the buyer financing? Or it's like, yeah, something like that if it's not your client. But most of the time, what tends to happen is what? It's your client. Right? I talked to Randy this morning too. I'm like, hey, look, let me ask you this. What's been the 3 biggest reasons why you think you've seen deals fall through lately? What do you think you said? Number one, the agent's not set expectations, so the buyer does not get the documents to them. They're not fully truthful with them, and it's pulling teeth to get any documents to get to them. So by the time they do get documents, the buyer's frustrated, the seller's frustrated, it's past the deadline, the seller doesn't want to extend, boom, the deal falls through in that scenario too. And then the buyer feels, oh, this is God happening because we didn't work out. But meanwhile, they didn't do what they were supposed to and get the documents in time for them to do. Does that make sense? So that's a thing. And we had how many last week, Ryan? 7 fall through last week. So that's like, you're taking 10 steps forward, 7 steps back. That's a very miserable life as an agent, right? And so give me a couple who had some last fault. Give me the reasons. Now, Barron had one that wasn't his fault. He had the listing. The buyer was on the other side, and the buyer didn't close, right? So could be saying that, right?
Could be anything. So
give me the other ones. Jeremy, how many deals Jeremy, how many deals this year you had that were verbal that the buyers and sellers agreed and the buyer never signed it and gave it back?
I have just one property alone that had 2 buyers do that.
I just know a lot of meetings you talked about. There's been buyers, you come to a verbal agreement. You go through the agent who we don't control that side, the other agent. They're not controlling their clients, they're not pre-framing the clients, setting expectations. They're order takers, and all of a sudden the buyer backs out and never sends a deal back. That's my point, right? You're seeing that too. So here's the thing. What does everything come down to? Communication, but more importantly what?
Pre-frame and setting expectations.
Barron nailed it, right? Expectations. So everything about this is expectations. Now, I was talking about this earlier. Every problem I have as a team leader or a broker comes down to mismanaged expectations from the client, period. But this is a big thing because it's a moneymaker for you, doing all this work, all this stuff. You're showing houses. And here's the thing. A lot of times when it blows up, typically 30-40% of them go somewhere else because they don't want to work with you anymore because they'd blame you instead of wanting to blame themselves. Does that make sense? And so that they just tend to ghost and disappear, or they become disgruntled with buying in general, so they just put it on hold. 60-70%, you can still put them back on something else. That's a lot of extra work, and some buyers fall through 2 and 3 times, right? That's not the buyer's issue. That's what? Your issue in terms of expectations. And that's a big thing to watch out for. So the most important thing that you got to do as an agent is a reminder for some of y'all, but you all need to hear it, period. Number 1, you must set expectations. What does that mean? Pre-frame what? I'm pre-framing how they need to think and what's going to happen next. So here's what's going to happen next. Here's what I need you to do. So I'm pre-framing them, meaning I'm setting a frame for their thoughts of what's going to happen, what needs to happen. Then I also got to be constantly doing what? Manage expectation. What does that mean? I'm constantly setting, resetting, setting, resetting, setting, resetting. Why?
Because you're going into different frames.
They're forgetting. They're emotional, right? So you don't have to worry about this plane crashing, but if we keep having turbulence, what are they thinking? The plane's going to crash. And so the pilot, as you, being the pilot in this situation, you need to go back and reassure them consistently, hey, no big deal. Some random turbulence, that's pretty common. They're not going to have any worries. We'll be right through it in about 15, 20 minutes. And then they have something to look forward to that gets past turbulence. And here's the thing. If I don't tell them to be bumps or turbulence in the road, what happens when there is?
They're going to think they're going to crash.
Yeah, so part of me, and as an agent, when I say, hey, look, guess what, Bobby, we're going to have some bumps in this process. Unfortunately, you're not paying cash for this deal, so we're going to have to go through the bank. And guess what the bank's going to do? They're going to ask you a bazillion questions. They're going to look at everything you've ever done your whole life. They're going to look at everything you paid and not paid. And they're going to ask you for every document you can possibly imagine. You know why? Because you don't have $350,000 in cash, okay? Why? I need to be strong about that. Not, but I need to be strong. Why? Because what happens if I don't do that? They get super triggered. Why does this guy ask me for all these documents? Because you don't have your bank account. That's why. And they're not going to give you their money without you proving to them that you can pay them back. But what do? We tend to be weak about it and not really pre-frame them and not push back on them. So then they get angry and then they leave a bad review about the lender asking for documents, which I've had that happen too. Right? So the reality is we have to make sure that and that's a part of that. That's a little bit of a hard expectation, but I want to have that conversation in a nice way. Right? Makes sense. I'm not going to put them down, but hey, Bobby, unfortunately, we're not paying cash in this situation, which means we're going to have to ask for that money, which means the bank's going to give you $350,000 of their money to buy this house with. And what do you think that means? You got to prove to them that you can pay them back. And I know you can. I know you're great to do it. And obviously you seem super sharp. But the reality is, guess what? They have to sell that loan to somebody else in a third-party market, in an open market. And guess what they got to do? Prove to them that they checked you out and that you can pay this loan back. So you know what that means?
I got to send a lot of crap.
They're going to ask you for everything you can possibly imagine. What you paid 3 years ago, old bank statements, old pay stubs. You got to prove how you got this money and that money. Oh, yeah, by the way, you got any investment properties? Make sure you tell us about all of them, not just one or two of them. Because if they're not, they're going to find it. And if we don't get all the documents on time, what do you think happens?
I'm not going to get a house.
Or it goes past the deadline, and what do you think happens to your earnest money? The seller takes it because you didn't perform in time. Okay? So just want to make sure we're on the same page. I'll help you get whatever you need. I'll help guide you through that process, but I need you to know that whatever Randy asks for, we got to get to him ASAP. Does that sound fair enough?
Yeah.
That's an example of what? Setting a clear expectation that's pre-framed. You see my point? So here, remember we used to have the reality of the market conversation with our clients, right? You want to have a reality of the lending situation. Hey, look, here's the reality. This is one thing we're talking about. No more reason because delays happen, then all of a sudden through delays come frustration and disconnection, and all of a sudden that's where they give, oh, God just helped us. I think God made this happen. We're backing out. No, dude, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, which is why you didn't get approved yet, which is why it's getting delayed, which is why we didn't close on time. Does that make sense? And so we have to make sure that we're having this conversation when? Right after it goes under contract, okay? And then early and often is the way to look at it. And then I'll go back and redo it. Here, why it's so important in the beginning, because if I get them calling me 2 weeks later, Randy's underwriters have asked for 6 more documents, and they're super triggered, what do? I have to have an anchor. This is called an anchor. So I have an anchor conversation. I go back and say, Lucas, remember that time right after we went under contract, I had the conversation about the reality of lending? And I told you, that's all these trade documents, they're going to look at your entire life upside down to make sure you can pay for it. This is that time. So we need to make sure we now reset the expectation, and I'm managing it by anchoring back to that conversation I had. The conversation is there so you can go back to it later. Does that make sense? So if I ignore it and I wait too late to do it, it's too late to do it because it's already triggered. Does that make sense? So it's important for us to understand that piece overall. The second piece of this, which is similar, is the pre-frame, which is what you got to constantly be pre-framing. The difference here, I'll call the pre-frame versus the set expectations, is like the pre-frame's how to think when things happen. The set managed expectations about what's going to happen. Does that make sense? So the set managed expectation, here's what's going to happen next. Here's what I need you to do when it happens. The pre-frame comes down to really how I'm looking at them overall. And so there's really a couple main things. Number one, the roadmap, right? So what am I doing here?
I mean, once you go under contract, you're saying next steps, here's what's going to happen next.
Here's what's going to happen.
Earnest money, attorney, lender, home inspection, have a 5-10 minute conversation with them, and then
100%. So I want to pre-frame all the potential blow-up points, right? If you look at statistics of 118 different things that have to happen in a sale, there's 4 main ones that really kind of blow up. Does that make sense? So obviously the roadblocks and things, hey, guess what, Lucas? There's going to be some bumps along the road. You know why? We're not paying cash and we have a home inspection. So the reality is there's going to be some bumps, and that's okay. As long as they're not major, we'll get right through them. But just know it's going to be, and that's going to be worth it because you got a fantastic deal. Make sense? Now, pre-frame, then once the road bumps happen, they think not a big deal. Second part, where does the number one thing things are blowing up right now? Home inspection. So I'm talking about the points, right? Home inspection is where you're seeing the major. There's an article in KCM blog, I talked on my radio show the other week, that the number one reason deals are falling through technically is home inspection. So what happens? It comes up, they ask for this stuff, they want all this huge credit or everything to be fixed. And so if you don't set expectations and pre-frame them how to think, what's going to happen?
They're going to want everything taken care of.
Yes, and so
Or they just get cold feet and don't.
what you're seeing a lot more in due diligence, right? They just back out in the due diligence for no reason, and they won't even tell you why, right? And so my job is to control this up front. And so, hey, guess what? I just had one last week on my Waterside Drive property. It was like 69 pages, right? And so all kind of stuff. The neighbors would say, dude, that guy was there for 12 hours at the home inspection. There's going to happen. So if I'm the buyer's agent, even the listing agent, I pre-frame my guy. Hey, dude, there's a lot back on this thing. So we ain't going to get away with this without giving something, okay? Makes sense? Hopefully it's not too major. If it is, we won't give them something. And if it's small, guess what we're going to do? Still give them something, right? Because your house is in not great shape. Makes sense? So then it does happen. It's not that big of a shock. My situation, they came back and asked for 20 grand. I said, look, we'll settle for 10. And the house needed a lot of stuff. Had some rot underneath. What do you call it? The joists were rotten. There's issues. They had cinder blocks holding stuff up. There were some previous termite issues. It was something there where I still saved them half of what they asked for. Does that make sense? That's weak leadership from their brokerage, right? So the reason you don't do that is because there's no skin in the game. So if you let your seller accept that, that's a mistake on your part, right? The due diligence is supposed to be painful enough for them to not back out for small stuff, right? So what's that?
So if you do have,
Yeah, I would look at the comps and say, okay, you're not going to find anything else for this price in this range and get 40 grand off. Does that make sense? Yeah, how old was the house? Just, you're talking 40 years old, right? So some of that stuff's just going to be time. Like that one we have was built, I don't know, 50 something. You know, I'm like, I told the agent, I'm like, dude, this house has been since 1950. What do you think's going to be underneath there? You know what I mean? Dude, that stuff's is almost 100 years old. There's going to be on the bottom of it. And so part of that's just understanding like the pre-frame of that. But I go back to price range. Hey, my situation is at $299. There's nothing else in that price range that's in that area. So hey, dude, you can either take this or not in that scenario.
and that's kind of the thing was, by the time.
Go find. Yeah, and you got to find out. Here's the other thing, though. You got to watch out. If it's a random friend who's a helper, hey, you need to get your real license.
It was an actual contract.
Okay, yeah. Get your real license contractor. Because they even me on mine, they're like, this is $100,000 worth of work. I'm like, there's no way in hell it's $100,000 worth of work. We'll give you 10. And they took it, right? Yeah, so if you got to be careful, because I can't say, hey, look, still buy the house that's got the problems, right? Yeah, so most of the time it's just small stuff that people look at and they get super scared. So my job is to help pre-frame them. Hey, look, you're going to, because here's why. They don't know what to expect, right? And so this is the biggest shocker, and you guys know this, but here's what happens. We get lazy sometimes. I've noticed this in the recordings, too, of stuff, of listing stuff. We know what to say, we just don't say it because we skip over, we get lazy, we cut corners. And so I know I got to do this because they're not used to a 60-page home inspection. So they think this, and they get the email, and you haven't set the expectations. What do they think? Oh my God, this thing's falling apart. It's the worst scene. So you have to get ahead of this to make sure they understand, look, you're going to get crazy. It's going to look like this whole thing's falling down.
Well, not only like you said, knowing.
Yeah, because if it's still a great deal, and it does have $40,000 worth, hey, dude, we can go buy a new one for $680. You can buy this one for $500 with some issues on the floors. Yeah. Remember I told you in the house?
Like everybody's doing, right?
And if you're not sure what to do it or what age is, take your AI, just put it on the label of the HVAC or the home, what do you call it, water heater, and it'll tell you the exact age of it, right? If you're not sure how to read that, but it is on there. Second, I want to get going. Third thing, where's the next hurdle or roadblock is lending, right?
With the home inspection, if you're not doing at least like $500 due diligence, there's a good chance they're going to back out.
1,000%. Every listing I have will never let them accept anything less than 500 ever, right? If you get an agent who's like,
mobile home or piece of land or something maybe.
and if you get agents, well, we do $100 brokerage. Well, unfortunately, we don't allow ourselves to do that here. They can basically, let me rephrase that, right? We advise ourselves not to take that here because they're not going to take their house off the market for 15 days so you can back out for $100. Just not worth it, right? Costs them more to own it than it is to take it off the market. So in reality, you can do 500 or 1,000. And obviously, I check with my seller first, right? We shoot for 1,000 because that keeps them in the game a little bit, but 500 is absolute minimum. Jeremy and I've been through this a million times, right? Yep, 10's the max every single time because it's too much time wasted if not. And anybody can get a home inspection within 10 days right now. period, right? So when the market's super high, it's a little bit difficult, right? The next hurdle is lending. So I'm gonna have this conversation. Roadmap is, hey, here's what's gonna happen. I want you to expect. You gotta make sure you get the attorney picked, right? We gotta have our closing coordinator reach out to you. You're gonna make a decision about that. Get earnest money turned in by the deadline. It has to be turned in. Wire, overnight, whatever it is, however the process works with who you're using, it makes a big difference. And then here's the key one that people miss out on. What do you think the last one is, the biggest one? Emotions. I'm going to pre-frame them, which is, pre-frame means how to think about what? Emotions, right? Hey, guess what, Ryan? You know what's going to happen after you got by this and we get under contract now? You're going to keep looking, and guess what? You're going to have what every buyer has. What does everybody have when they buy something big? Buyer's remorse. You know what? Everybody has it, and guess what? That's okay. It's natural. Right? So the reality is you're going to question yourself if you made the right decision or not. You know what? You guys made a fantastic decision. As we went through the comps I showed you, we're getting a great deal on it. It's a great property, exactly what you want. Whatever it is, you got to go back and reiterate what that is, because you got to get ahead of the emotions. Right? This is super big. This is obviously big in timeshare too, right? Timeshare, what do you got? The rescission period. You got to be, and you got to think this is important. And this goes back to the timeshare stuff. And when I was doing it too, I was interviewed a guy last week who's big in timeshare. We were talking about the rescission period, especially online with all the Facebook groups now and all the different websites. Everybody's Googling and telling everybody, and you got to manage that period. And hopefully you trial close enough in the meantime, but you go back and do what? Reassure them. Right? Resell them on it, check in with them, make sure that, yeah. And if you don't, what happens? It's going to cancel, right? In our case, in our world, it's going to blow up because they're going to get scared. Why? Everybody gets scared. You can have a dream car on your vision board for 4 years. You buy the dream car. What happens the next day? Oh, damn, man, I don't know if I should have bought this thing, right? Payments are too much. What happens if I, lose my job or whatever else? All of a sudden, you have to think, because everybody does it. Right? So you have to make sure here's what your emotion is going to be, so that when it does happen, especially if the conversation with wife and husband, typically you want them to say, remember, Ryan told you it's going to happen. And that's okay. I want to get in their head before they get in their head. Does that make sense? Now, what do people do? They get lazy and they skip this step. That's blowing up. Especially here's the deal. If you're brand new and you need the deal, and you're really scared to have a tough conversation because you're scared to have a collision conversation, guess what? That costs you a lot of money. You have to do it. Listing side, same thing. Hey, guess what? This is a great offer. You make sure to take it. They're going to come in. They're going to ask for repairs. And you know what? That's okay. That's going to happen because this house is not perfect. They go buy D.R. Horton right now for less money or similar money down the street and get 3.99% and their closing costs paid for. So we're lucky as hell to get this offer. Yep. See what I'm saying? So I want to make sure I'm having this, but where do people miss the most is emotion. These are the biggest ones. They're not sure what happens next, so roadmap gets them, right? Number 2 is the home inspections, the biggest one by far. Number 3 is lending and the delays in lending and not getting what they need to get. And then obviously the other one is emotions. And so we got to make sure you're getting ahead of that to manage it in that part. Now, what's the way to get ahead of that? Make sure the next thing I want to do is I make sure I'm forecasting. Why? Forecasting. Why?
So they know what's coming.
Yes. There are the bumps in the road. I'm telling them, hey, guess what? We're going to have some bumps in the road. There's going to be some issues. And these are all similar, but they're different, okay? Here's what's on. So this is pre-frame how to think, right? Well, hey, you know what? We're going to probably have some issues in this scenario. Kind of like Austin said. I'm trying to narrow that down to a little bit about what it's about specifically. Hey, remember I said the HVAC is old? Hey, you know what? The roof's a little bit old. Insurance may come in a little high, right? Whatever it is, I'm trying to look and understand. Here's what I'm going to forecast. Because why do I need to forecast and tell them about the bumps in the road?
They don't get really hyped and emotional.
It lessens the blow. So I want you to write that down. Lessens the blow. So if I get ahead of this, it lessens the blow. Seller side, what's the biggest complaint you think the sellers have? What do we get hammered on for 2 or 3 months in a row? You remember, Jeremy?
In the closing process?
Yeah.
What, delays?
Buyer delays.
Yeah.
And the seller get pissed at who? Us. So I got to get really good at hey, guess what? Mr. and Mrs. Seller, these lenders out here, guess what? Most of them are idiots, right? There's 100 of them. They don't know what they're doing. They're not getting their documents in. I'm going to be over the top. Why?
So it's,
I need to stick with them and then visualize it. The buyer, they're getting pissed when they ask them for every little document. You think they're actually getting the documents to them on time? Nope. So do you know what the chances are of this deal actually closing on the closing date? Fairly none. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to give them a little bit of grace if we need to. I'm not going to tell them that. But between you and me, if they get past the deadline, we're not going to cut them off. We're going to give them a couple, we'll set expectations, give them 1 or 2 extensions if we have to. But thankfully, we have a closing team. We're going to get ahead, make sure they're getting everything done, check with the lender, all this other stuff. But the chance of this closing on time are slim to none, okay? Just want to make sure we're on the same page. 100%. You look at the rock star, right? And so this is coming, so that's an example of forecasting. Because if not, what happens to them? We had one that was a perfect scenario. It was late one time, and lady goes on and lets a bad review about us, seller side, right? We could have communicated it better, and it goes back, we can learn some lessons from that. But the reality is, we had no control over that. And we told the lady, hey, look, we have no control of that. If that was my client, we could have controlled that, but we couldn't. And they were still pissed at us. Why? Because they're navigating buying something else on the other side. So my job is to do what? Forecast potential bumps. And obviously it comes from experience, but just make sure you're trying to get ahead of everything of whatever it is. That make sense? And then obviously I'm going back here. This is kind of what I talk about, the reality of the market. So how do I do that in today's market? Yeah, so buyers, I'm talking about Fed futures, talking about interest rates going up, talking about locking in a great rate. Talking about here's the deal. Guess what? You're going to see a lot of houses in the market, and guess what you're going to do? You're going to get all these emails, these other houses, you're going to see them online, and guess what you're going to think? No, man, that's the one. But in reality, it's not the one. There's a reason that one's on the market. There's a reason it hasn't sold yet, whatever it is. And so we found the right one. Do you guys feel like this is the right one for you? Yes. Okay, cool. I'm going to stop the emails for you. And you obviously keep looking, but the reality is you guys found the right one. And we want to make sure we get this closed before the next 2 interest rate hikes to the Federal Reserve the rest of this year. Make sense? You guys with me on this? On the seller side, what am I talking about?
Buyers have a lot more choices.
Buyers have a whole lot more choices. The more you wait, right, the less we keep this deal together. If we had to put it back on the market, typically, guess what we're going to have to do? Lower the price, reduce price. You don't want to do that, do you? Nope. So it's much more effective for us to make sure we keep this deal together now.
Listing side, you hammer them on new construction and condos if you have any like resale houses.
Yep, condos say, hey, look, market's falling 13%. Right now, your condo is losing about $1,500 a month in value. So we can sell this one now, or we can wait later and sell it for another $30,000 less. Which one you want to do? Right? You have to have that reality of the market conversation based on what side it is. Make sense? And so obviously it's their scenario. I'm going to give you guys some examples. What's the second biggest thing you think that dictates if it stays together or not?
I think a lot of it's certainty.
Yep, you kind of nailed it in a way. Comes down to energy, right? Energy is the next most important part. Right? Why is that?
Be confident about it. If you have doubts, they'll have doubts.
You gotta feel you gotta trust.
Every piece of energy you have is magnified. Why? It's a high stakes buy sale, right? It's a high ticket item. Anytime there's high ticket, there's high emotion. So high emotion means everything's magnified. Every little thing they think's going wrong, guess what they think? This is God playing his part, her part, right? Whatever it is to them, his part to them. That makes sense? And so that's a key thing that you have to make sure hey, look, my energy, guess what everything is? No big deal, right? The key most important thing I wrote down here is you got to manage yours. So what does that mean?
You can't get upset, you can't get mad, you can't get scared, you gotta do that. Even keel.
100%, right?
Reframe yourself.
Yeah, so no matter, and here you might have 3 deals that fell through together right before this, right? You may down to 2 pending, whatever it is. You get that thing, you don't freak out. Whatever it is, no big deal. Your job is to make sure that you keep cool, calm, and collected so that you can make good decisions. They can make good decisions. That makes sense? Other agent on the other side triggers you, who cares? Not your problem. You're not here to win that part. You're here to win the war, not the battle. Does that make sense? And so very important here. And this is true. Like anybody got kids? All right? If you freak out at the kids, what happens? Yeah, like we were on the boat this week, and Luke goes and touches the at Barefoot Landing, the railing, gets like 6 splinters. And Kelly like grabs, she's like, oh my God, I get splinters. And he's like, oh my God, I got splinters. I'm like, bro, what do you do? Calm down, Kelly. Like, not a big deal.
You confirm how they feel.
Yeah, she's just like, he was totally fine. He didn't even know he had splinters until she did that, you know? And the point is, like, they do the same exact thing. And so we got to make sure that you're keeping cool, calm, collected no matter what it is, okay? Because our job is to make good strategic decisions based on scenario, whatever it is, right? So third piece here, energy of certainty. What does that mean? No matter what, you have energy of certainty. If you have a bad day, stuff going on, you see the home inspection, you're like, no, whatever it is, you take a few minutes, get cool, calm, collected, everything, hey, know what it is? No big deal. I want you guys to write that, no big deal. It is what it is, right? We're going to get through it, figure it out. Most of the time, they're just overhyped stuff that gets people. So I have to make sure my energy is managed. I have the energy of certainty because that allows me to do what? I must manage your energy. How do I do that? I want you to write this down. You got to be hyper aware. What does that mean?
Part of knowing their situation, knowing what their pain is, like that kind of stuff.
Yep, I'm going to get deeper on that in a few minutes, of taking them back to where it was. I'm hyper aware of what their words are saying, what they're doing, what they're reacting. I'm reading their energy to me. If they're short to me, what does that mean? They're upset about something, they're worried about something, or they're scared, they want to back out, they're scared to tell me the truth. So then I'm going to do what? If I suspect that or feel that emotion, I'm going to ask questions. Hey, let me ask you this, Ryan. Something seems a little off. You guys okay? Everything good? How are you feeling right now? Just go deep about it. Hey, how are you feeling right now? That's an easy one. Hey, Raymond, it seems, we're halfway through the process. How are you feeling right now? Make sense? And check in with them. Hey, look, what can we do better? Anything you need for us? And then you're going to tell them, hey, look, we're in a position right now where I can't really do much till the lender gets the information. I'm in a holding pattern. I want to make sure we do everything on our end. The next thing for me to do is a home inspection. I'll help negotiate that for you guys. I'm waiting on the lender, waiting on you guys. Make sense? Then we're waiting on them to get the title work done. That'll be the next phase away. And so you got to tell them, hey, look, I'm kind of tied up right now, but I'm watching the sidelines for you. Because otherwise they think what? You're not doing anything. And so and then you get to the closing table, they want your commission. Well, you didn't do anything. I should get 3% of your commission back. Right? Anybody had that happen before? No. I've seen it. Many people asked us for it over the years because, the agent they just found the house and wrote the contract. That was it. Right? So you got to be careful about that so you're communicating through the process. They know what's going on. And if you're not telling them you're doing it, they don't know you're doing it. Does that make sense? So a very, very important piece here with that. Right? Number 3, before, I guess, understand their stories. What does that mean?
They just understand where they're coming from.
So most of their stories are going to be, they're just emotional, right? Their belief in their own stories, which is typically filled with fear. And so my job is to understand and listen carefully about what their stories are so I can do what? Course correct. Hey, I totally understand you feel that way. Guess what? Almost all of my buyer clients or all my seller clients feel that way in the process. Like here, anybody ever had, wow, this seller is just screwing us over. Right? You guys had that? This seller, I know they're doing us wrong.
That seller on that condo, she thinks the buyer is like trying to go beyond it, like just do all crazy conspiracy shit. I'm like, no, the buyer is doing that.
The buyer's doing the same thing, right?
The buyer's trying to buy another condo with the property managers. The managers are trying to ruin the property values for the whole community. I'm like, I don't think it's that deep, lady.
That's an example of what? Wild stories. And so my job is to get ahead of that. Hey, I totally appreciate that, but you know what? Statistically, most likely not happening. Right? This is the process that happens. It's a long process. Everyone gets these emotions. And you can tell them, hey, you guys know what stories are? There are these emotions going to come into your head. You're going to think everything's going sideways. You think the seller's doing you wrong. Most time, guess what? They're not doing it wrong. They're just trying to get to the closing table too. And so part of what my job is to keep you guys from killing each other. Okay? So we want to make sure that we're doing our part. They do their part. I'll protect you. Does that sound great? Cool. Make sense? You got to make sure you get ahead of that, which is very, very important. And then if that happens, what do I got to do? I got to collide with them. Somebody said it earlier. When do I do that? Early and often. The more I wait, the longer I wait to collide with their stories about the conspiracy theory they got in their head, guess what?
Too late.
The bigger the theory is, the harder it is to kill. The zombie has gotten too close. The zombie gets too big. It's very hard for me to overcome that. And so if I sniff out or hear these things, this seller, I know they're screwing us over. They're trying to sell it to somebody else or whatever it is, right? You guys say, hey, I totally appreciate that. I understand exactly why you feel that way. Most of my clients kind of feel that same way in this part of the process. But in reality, I've done hundreds of deals, and that's not necessarily the case in most of the time. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No.
If you wait too long, sometimes they'll turn on you too.
100%.
Because they'll think you're working for the other side now. Like it becomes part of their story.
That happens all the time. Hey, seems to me like you're working for the seller. Yeah. No, dude, I'm just telling you the truth like I told it was. Remember the time I first met you, Lucas? And I told you I had to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear? Right? This entire process, that's part of the time. And so unfortunately, that means I got to have a tough conversation with you every once in a while. You know why? Because you're super emotional right now. I'm not. Make sense? So you have that conversation. Now, if you have a needy energy and you need the deal to close because you haven't making your phone calls, what happens? You become needy because you need a deal, and all of a sudden it magnifies worse because they can read and sense that in their subconscious. That's why it's important to make your calls, to have your pipeline. If I got 10 deals, guess what? I don't do. Buy this thing if you want to. If not, we'll show you something else. And all of a sudden, what do they want to do? They want to buy it because they feel your unattachment to the outcome as long as you're guided from the right energy and the right heart. Does that make sense? I'm telling you, for me, when I first got to that point, I didn't care anymore. And I was so busy, I was like, I was just basically overwhelmed and angry because I was working, 12, 15 hours a day. And I was like, you know what, dude, don't buy the damn thing. I think you probably shouldn't buy it. And guess what? Made him want to buy it more. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those things that once you get to that point where but you have to do it from a true certainty standpoint, not like a fake positioning standpoint. Does that make sense? So that's key important person. Now, where does the number one complaint I get?